When you call 911, you want someone to come right away. But in one New Mexico neighborhood, people are waiting 15 to 20 minutes for emergency crews to arrive. They blame the closure of their local fire station. On special assignment tonight, News 13's Gabrielle Burkhart shows you why it closed and what it will take to get it back.
From the moment she called 911,
I was very afraid.
every minute that passed
With a cardiac event, it just keeps getting worse.
felt like an eternity for Martha Greenleaf.
When you sit there and you look out the window and you don't see a fire truck or an ambulance coming, it's just like you're gonna sit there and die.
More than 15 minutes later, paramedics did arrive, and Greenleaf was taken to the hospital for a blockage in her heart. That was 2 years ago.
How did you feel when that was happening?
Abandoned, absolutely abandoned.
She's healthy today, but she's fired up about the slow response she and her neighbors in Mariposa are receiving for emergency services in far northern Rio Rancho.
One of the first things you see when you drive into the community is the Mariposa Fire Station. But since 2014, Station 6 has sat empty.
It's not fair, it's not right, it's not equitable.
National fire response standards set a travel time goal of 4 minutes. Records show in 2017 there were 38 calls for service from Mariposa. It took Rio Rancho fire rescue crews an average of 14 minutes to arrive. Last year, there were 37 calls from Mariposa. The average response time, 15 minutes. Some calls took more than 20. In those 2 years, the city of Rio Rancho had roughly 11,000 total calls for service, with an average response time around 8 minutes.
We still pay for the same right to have that early response that every other citizen in Rio Rancho does. Just because there's a little bit of vacant land between us and the city center shouldn't isolate us.
Rio Rancho Fire Chief Paul Bierce says Mariposa isn't alone when it comes to slow response times.
One of the problems that Rio Rancho has is a kind of a foundational problem on how the city grew.
Citygate Associates, a fire and EMS consulting agency, highlighted some of the city's problems in a 2014 study. Take this map. The red dots represent Rio Rancho's 6 fire stations. The green represents areas with 6-minute response times. Anyone living outside the green, Bierce says, will have longer wait times.
Most cities start in a very, very tight, small area from a city center or city hall, and that type of thing, and they tend to grow out.
Rio Rancho's infrastructure is more of a donut shape, with pockets of neighborhoods and fire stations built on the outskirts. So in order to improve overall response times, Bierce says he had to pull resources south to the highest call volume areas.
It's very, very difficult from our perspective to provide adequate services with the resources that we have to everybody equally.
When the Mariposa station was staffed, Bierce says there was always low call volume, so he mostly pulled those firefighters for other calls.
It was creating a huge lag in the response for a number of calls that were occurring.
Today, Rio Rancho Fire Rescue isn't fully staffed. Bierce says last year it lost 17 firefighters, half of them paramedics. Without more funding and staff, he says they're doing the best they can.
I have to put the resources where the calls are in order to do the most good for the most people.
But knowing she's not alone in getting a slow response doesn't make Greenleaf feel better.
And if it's your emergency, how would you feel? Like they left you out in the cold.
So what would it take to staff Station 6 again?
Well, at this point in time, I would say quite a bit more housing volume out there.
Mayor Greg Hull says when building started there in 2005, the city had 3,000 housing permits for Mariposa that year. Then in 2008, the housing market crashed and building stopped.
Well, here we are 13 years later, and Mariposa still is at only 450 homes.
Today, there's evidence of growth. Homebuilder company flags and construction can be seen across the community, but funding is still an issue, Hull says. Staffing Station 6 full-time would cost an extra $1 million on top of the city's $11 million fire budget. In the meantime, he says they're working on more creative solutions, like using this paramedic fly car, an SUV that carries a floater EMS crew anywhere in the city.
We never want anybody to feel abandoned, and we always want people to feel safe here.
He promises the Mariposa Fire Station won't stay closed forever.
Until we get the funding up there and we start to see a critical mass of homes come up out there, then we're going to start to see the lights come back on at that fire station.
Still, that doesn't sit well for people like Greenleaf.
When you call 911,
You're going to wait. You're going to wait, and you don't have any idea how long it's going to be before someone comes to help.
On special assignment, Gabrielle Burkhart, KRQE News 13.
Rio Rancho is also working to get a helicopter for help with emergency response. That crew will be staged in Mariposa. We posted more information on the medical chopper along with the response time study. Just go to alwaysonkrqe.com.